At least I know I'm reaching one person. Well, we're going to get started, and I guess if somebody else can hear me, they can write on the comments. This is episode 6 of my Facebook Live. We do it obviously every Tuesday night at 7 o'clock. So hopefully that's right after dinner for most people. I know it is for me. And we've been talking about a variety of topics. This is episode 6, and this is one of my favorite things to talk about. What makes you fast? Or how do you get fast? Or do you even want to be fast? That's what we're going to be talking about tonight. I had one of my other buddies tell me he's a drag racer predominantly, and he said what makes you fast is spending lots of money on parts that make the car go fast. And in drag racing, if all you're worried about is ET, that would be true if you spend the money wisely. Otherwise, you can spend the money so the car just blows up and it'll be fast for a moment, but that's about it. So in road racing, the car has to be fast for more than just 10 seconds. It's got to be reliable enough to finish a 25-minute, 35-minute, 50-hour, or for endurance races, 24 hours. That's a long time. Pit stops and all that stuff. So, anyway, if you analyze it, what makes someone fast? Fast meaning able to take the car to the absolute limit, meaning that we could fly Lewis Hamilton to where you are on the same track on the same day. You get out of the car, he gets into the car, and how much faster would he be than you? That's the $100 question, and that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. I've been pretty fortunate. I've got a chance to race with some really fast people. I've got a chance to see what it feels like to be the fastest moments in time. Setting lap records in your class, that means for a moment in time, you're the fastest. So that's kind of cool. And of course, winning races. Um, I can tell you that being fast is more fun than not being fast. And here's what I mean. Let's say you're going to go to an open lapping day. High Plains is having one this Saturday. Got a couple of clients that'll be out there, so I'll be out there. So make sure you say hello at the Go4IT trailer. But being fast, there's really 3 elements that if you don't have these 3 elements, you can't be the fastest like ever. Number one is you've got to have the correct line. Um, a lot of people think they have the correct line, but it's got to be exact. If you kind of have the correct line, then you're probably turning more than somebody else that has the correct line. So you're traversing a longer distance. The car has to turn tighter. That's going to slow you down. And you by the laws of physics can't go as fast as somebody that's got the perfect line. So line is a big thing. Um, I'm out at High Plains a lot. I very rarely see someone that has the correct line everywhere. Um, on the straightaway, pretty much everybody's got the correct line. But going into the corners, the turn in, the apex, the exit, do they have the correct line? Are they using all of the track? Most people are not. The best, of course, are. Then you've got to have intensity. What I mean by intensity is not courage, or being fearless. Intensity means that you can turn it all the way up to the limit of the car, maybe even go over the limit just a little. Then you'll rely on your car control so that you don't lose control of the car, and keeping it at that high intensity. And finally, and the biggest one, is feel. Can you anticipate what the car is going to do just before it actually does it? Most people that drive at speed, they react to what the car does instead of knowing what the car is going to do in advance and then letting the car come to them. That's what I'm talking about when I say feel. Feel includes smoothness. Feel includes anticipation. If you have really good feel, it's easier to be consistent. And all of those things are, I mean, you don't have to be consistent to be fast. Um, if you're doing autocross or time attack, all you really need to do is one good lap per session or per 3 lap run if you're in autocross or solo. So it's kind of a different, it's kind of a different thing. But in road racing, especially sprint racing, if you've got a race that's under an hour long, it's probably a sprint race. Especially if you've got a slower car, your car can probably be driven at 100% for an hour without the tires or the brakes, especially if it's a really slow car. Then you can drive it at 100% for a lot longer. Whereas the cars that are really fast, most of them you're not going to be able to drive at 100% for more than 5, maybe 10 laps, and then something's going to deteriorate, whether it's the tires or the brakes, or sometimes the motor will get hot. So there's a misconception that practice makes perfect. Practice has never made perfect, not all by itself. The example that I use is that I sing in the shower every day without instruction. I'm not getting any better. What I am doing is I'm getting very comfortable with the same mistakes that I make over and over. And I see that at the racetrack a lot. I've seen people, go through tire after tire set, brake set after brake set, rotors, all this stuff, punishing the car, and they reach a plateau and then they don't get any faster. And a lot of them don't know why. A lot of times, if you reach that plateau and you keep adding intensity, then of course, eventually you'll lose control of the car, and hopefully nothing bad happens, but sometimes you crash the car. And that's not good, and that doesn't make you any faster. Most people that have a bad experience or a bad crash, takes them a moment to get beyond that. Of course, the best race car drivers get beyond it almost immediately because they realize that out of the entire lap, they only made probably 2 seconds of a mistake out of a 2 minute lap. So all they need to do is change that 2 seconds. It doesn't mean that the entire lap was bad. So it's very important. But perfect practice makes perfect. Proper sequence practiced over and over and over, yes, then it becomes self-generating, and you can go faster and faster until you reach the absolute limit by the laws of physics of the car. Then everything that you try is going to make you go slower because there's a window, a threshold, if you will. And if you're below that threshold, the car can go faster. And if you're above the threshold, the car can go faster, but now you're wearing out parts because you're probably sliding. And if you're sliding more than a 15% slip angle, depending on the car, a low horsepower car is going to be a little less. You could be going faster. And even though you may be adding intensity, even though you may be gripping the wheel tighter, even though your heart rate may be up, car doesn't care about any of that. The car cares about, did you hit your line? And are you at the absolute limit, the threshold, if you will, of braking, cornering, and acceleration? If you are at that threshold or in that window and you're on the line, then you're fast by the laws of physics. Because nobody can go faster than the car can go by the laws of physics. Now, if it was really seat time, you would be able to, whoever did the most laps around a particular course would be the fastest, right? Well, the problem is there's people that have been out to High Plains or Pueblo or La Junta, and they've been out to that track for 5, 6, 7, 10 years. They're out there a lot, and they reach a particular plateau where they just don't go any faster. Now, you fly somebody in like Lewis Hamilton or a Johnny O'Connell, um, they will usually immediately, within about 5 laps, go faster than anybody's ever seen anybody go on that track. And they've never been in the car and they've never been on the track. That, my friend, is sequence, not seat time. And that's what makes somebody fast, regardless of where they go. Then it doesn't matter what car you drive. Then it doesn't matter the weather conditions. None of that matters because proper sequence is adaptable. When I get in a car that I've never driven before, I want to ask the car, what are the limits? How much acceleration do you have? Okay, that's easy. You know, on the straightaway, you floor the car. How much braking do you have? Well, that's easy too. Just keep pushing on the pedal until you reach the threshold, or ABS, which is going to be right after the threshold. We talked about braking in another segment. And then cornering speed. And cornering speed is going to be dependent on the actual corner. Some corners are obviously banked, some are off camber, some are uphill, some are downhill, some are increasing radius, some are decreasing radius. This is where the line's going to come in. Any corner that's decreasing radius, downhill, or off camber, you're going to use a late apex line. I mean, it's almost guaranteed because with a late apex line, you'll be able to straighten out the worst part of the corner. If it's a downhill corner on the exit and you're going straight, you're going to minimize the negative effects of that particular downhill. Same thing with decreasing radius, same thing with off camber. Off camber just being the opposite of banking, for anybody that doesn't know what that means. So, those are the three. If you've got good feel and you're on the proper line and you turn your intensity all the way up, you're fast. It's as easy as that. And if you're missing one of those, you can only be so fast, no matter how many days you practice. You can practice and practice and practice, but if you don't know what you don't know and you're doing the incorrect line every single time, and you're turning more and you're not carrying the speed, you will never be as fast as the car can possibly go. And that's why instruction is so important. That's why racing with really fast people is really important, because a lot of times people will get into little groups of their buddies, and if they're the fastest one in their little group, they think they're fast. And sometimes they are fast. Oftentimes, though, they've never really seen fast. I remember when I did the Pikes Peak hill climb on a motorcycle, and I thought I was cooking along fairly good, and a guy passed me on the outside in a full lock slide in the dirt. This was back when it was half and half. And I thought I was going pretty fast. I was not. But I was fortunate enough to see fast and try to emulate for the short period of time that I saw him before he was gone what fast actually was. So it's important to be able to find proper sequence so that you can actually get fast. Now, when you go fast, you also don't want to be scared. Um, all going fast is, and Johnny O'Connell told me this when we were at the Long Beach Grand Prix, and he won in the World Challenge. And he goes, I was congratulating him afterwards, and he goes, "Yeah, man, all I did was hit my marks and stay at the limit, and I won another race." And that's really all there is to it. But getting to that point, I mean, I've hired people that are very fast, put them in my car with data, watched it, rode with them just to get every single bit of information on what's the difference. Why are you going 2/10 faster, a second faster? Because there's always a reason. A lot of people think that data is the answer. Well, data answers some questions, but it doesn't usually tell you how. It tells you where, tells you when, it tells you what, but it's the how that actually gets you to the next level. And it's not as easy as just saying, okay, well, I'm going to go faster here because the theoretical deal says that I can. If you could have done that, you would have already done that. And if you try to drive beyond your feel, that's when the risk really gets high. If you have more intensity than you do feel, then you'll usually lose control of the car. I mean, consistently, because you're hoping that you can really do that. Whereas if you feel it, then you know you can do it and it's not a big deal and you can do it over and over and over. So that's what makes you fast. So, any comments on any of that? If anybody can hear me other than Mike. If I've got an audience of one, I guess that's okay. But on this particular topic, I was hoping that I'd get more feedback, because a lot of people want to know how to go fast. A lot of people do it in different ways. I always say that if you took two identical car and drivers, and on one side you spent all of the money on the car and nothing on the driver, and on the other side you spent all the money on the driver and nothing on the car, the driver would win, 9 times out of 10. Because if you're not using the limit of your car anyway, and you're trying to increase the limit of your car, then you never, you never really get all that you're paying all that money for. Hey, Zach, welcome to the party. So, the way we do it is we take a car that's pretty much stock, we put different wheels and tires on it, and we learn how to drive it to the limit. Then the car will tell you what to do next. Driver is always number one on what makes a car go faster. Tires are number two, wheels number three, power number four, brakes number five, suspension, aero are in there. I don't know, on the 6, 7, wherever we were. But a lot of people will change a car so dramatically that it makes it much harder to drive. And then they comparatively go slower. What do I mean by that? Okay, well, let's say that we take a car that's bone stock and it turns a 2-minute flat out at High Plains. All right, so let's say you modify the suspension. You change the springs, the shocks, the sway bars. So now the car reacts much more quickly. Let's say more quickly than you're really ready for. So let's say in the hands of a trained driver, we fly in Lewis Hamilton. Now he can do a 155 out there. But let's say before, when we did a 2-minute, when we flew Lewis in and he did a 2-minute, you did a 2:02. So you were 2 seconds off of Lewis Hamilton, which would be pretty good. But then we changed the car's suspension. So now Lewis can do a 155, and you would think then that you would be able to do a 157. Well, instead, let's say you do a 158. So now, even though you spent all that money on springs, shocks, sway bars, and if you went Penske's, we're talking like 10 grand here, you're going slower comparatively than you were when the car was stock. Because when the car was stock, it was probably easier to drive than with the suspension being as quick as it is now. You have to be able to, your feel has to be a little bit better, a little bit faster to make utilization of quicker suspension. Likewise, if you, and I see this a lot, people get all the power, 1,000 horsepower cars, and they have stock tires. And I just chuckle. I'm like, there's no way, even in third gear, that you're going to be able to use that power. It's just going to break loose. And it's scarier to drive. And a lot of them don't consider putting sticky tires on the car. And that's what we start with. Because even a slow car with sticky tires is a faster car and a more fun car. We talked about tires in depth on another episode. A lot of people think that harder tires help you learn how to slide. And I guess there is a philosophy, yes, when you have less traction. In other words, let's say you're in the rain, yes, you will slide more because you have less traction. But you want to try to get the feel, the lateral weight transfer feel, which is one of the things we're talking about tonight, of a slide, or specifically the lateral point just before the car starts to slide, and that's what you react to. Or when the car just starts to slide, but it's only a 5% slide and you're right on the line, that's going to be perfect. So then you'll come out of the corner, threshold acceleration, car's moving around a little bit under power, then it grips right at the edge of the track, and then you're at full power, shifting at red line, which you're looking at the tack, you're not listening to the car or doing that by feel. Do that by actually looking at the tachometer, because nobody can tell the difference between 6,500 RPM and 6,700 RPM by ear and ear only reliably. So then you're shifting at the right point. You go directly to threshold braking. You release at the turn-in point, carry the speed in. So now you're threshold cornering, car's moving around a little bit. And just before it settles, you add power, go to constant throttle, then to full throttle. Once you're at full throttle, you stay at full throttle all the way to the exit. I target way ahead for the next corner. And so it goes corner by corner by corner by corner. And if you do that, and if you're on your line and you were at the limit the entire time, you're fast, buddy. That's it. That's all there is. It's easy. See how easy that was while we're sitting here, not in a car? Uh, the other thing is you have to believe it. You're in a front wheel drive. Okay. And hello, Luciano. Okay. Front wheel drive. And I've said this before. If you've got a front wheel drive car, pretty much all of them understeer. So what you have to do if you want them to turn a fast time in a road course is you have to make it so that they turn in quickly and then you can get back on the power. Usually that involves increasing spring rates or shock rates or sway bar diameter to stiffen up the rear, which will allow it to pivot or reduce the understeer or increase the oversteer. Front wheel drive is pretty cool because once you get the hang of it, you can kind of pitch it in and then immediately catch it with power, and your trajectory is going to be over the inside of the turn, but the car understeers so that it's perfectly at the apex and you can go really fast. When I was racing my Jetta, which Josh Fitzpatrick has now, and he's doing a great job with it. We worked with that car a lot so that it would turn and still carry a lot of speed through the turn. It turned an identical lap time to the Solstice, which is rear drive and handles really well. And they were about equal on power. The Jetta had a little bit better aero than a Solstice through the wind. So front wheel drive, yeah. I mean, I'm not a big fan of front wheel drive because I'm a drifter, lay big black marks as you come out of the corners kind of guy. But no, I had a lot of fun and continue to have a lot of fun driving front wheel drive cars. I had a client out at High Plains that rented one of my Mazda 6s, and yeah, it's pretty fun to do it correctly with a front wheel drive and an all wheel drive and a rear wheel drive. But rear wheel drive, you've got a certain balance, especially when you have 50-50 weight distribution. Boy, those are some fun cars to drive. And I'm kind of warming up to my C8 Corvette, the faster lap time. We get it down to, and we've gotten it down to a 155 out at High Plains. I'm enjoying it more and more now that it's faster lap time than my Solstice. Initially, when I got it, they turned about the same lap time. My Turbo Solstice, of course. So now, and the feel of it, my C8 does not understeer at all. We put wider tires on it. We put wider wheels on it, lower diameter wheels. We increase the track front and rear, and it turns in great. And I just got a bigger set of tires, so we're going to test it at some point. Maybe this Saturday. We've got some other testing to do, and I've got some students that are trying to get their SCCA licenses, so I'm sure I'll be occupied with that. But I'm hoping we can get another second out of it. And that's without doing any lowering of the suspension or changing of the alignment settings from what would just be stock on the street, so that I can get good tire wear, as opposed to getting pretty radical with the camber, caster, and tow, which would certainly make the car go faster, but at the expense of tire wear on the street, because it's my street car. When I want a Snickers bar, I get in the C8 and get one. So I want those tires to last as opposed to the inside edges of them wearing out. So, any stories of somebody that thought they were going to be fast but weren't fast, or how you got fast, or what opened your eyes as far as, wow, I didn't know my car could do that? Because I've got a lot of those stories where I've given people rides, and they've owned the car for maybe 10 years, and they've been out to High Plains a lot, or Pueblo a lot, or La Junta a lot, and I'll get in their car and immediately go 1 to 10 seconds faster than them. And the faster the car is, usually the bigger the difference in lap times. I once had a student that had an MG midget with 40 horsepower, and this was back when the Mountain View track in Meade was still open. And even though it was his first class, the car had so little power that the difference between my lap time and his lap time was only like a second. Because, literally, you could have put a brick on the gas pedal of the car, and you had to brake maybe 4 times a lap, and that was that. Whereas when you have a lot of power, then it's much harder to control. You can't just put a light switch in for the gas pedal. You have to feed it. You have to control the slide. Oftentimes you're counter steering on the exit of the turn to get the last bit of speed and time out of that car. So fast cars are harder to drive than slow cars. Big surprise. So any other stories? Let's see. Mike, Zach, Luciano. I'm trying to think. Of course, there's and I've always been a bang for the buck guy. I'm never going to be rich. I'm making payments on everything cool that I have. But it gives me great satisfaction to pass a car that costs double or more what mine does out on a road course. It just makes me smile, because the funny thing about me is I love driving really cool, really expensive cars, but I'm either unwilling or unable to buy stuff up the food chain that high. Um, I could probably get it, but I would not be willing to pay for the maintenance of a Ferrari or a Bugatti or something like that. Having said that, when I was racing Ducatis, I didn't really whine very much when I had to spend money on a Ducati motorcycle, because I dearly loved racing Ducati motorcycles. So it all depends. Who knows? But it's a lot of fun being fast and going fast. And as anybody that's been to an open lapping day can tell you, if you're out there passing cars and passing most of the cars, you're having way more fun than if you're just pointing everybody by, especially cars that have no business passing you to begin with. I was out in my normally aspirated Solstice at High Plains, and I passed a guy with a Turbo S Porsche, obviously not on the straightaway, but under braking and cornering. And he came up to me and said, "Man, that's a fast car." Well, I've got 175 horsepower about, and he has 620. So I didn't have a very fast car at all. But he left a lot on the table as far as braking and cornering and getting back on the power. and momentum. So lap time, I had the faster car with that driver car pairing. So yeah, hopefully I will see you guys out there this Saturday. If there's any other questions, now would be the time. Or if you want a short story, typing a short story is not a whole lot of fun when you're doing these things. But one of my buddies, her name is Jennifer Lane, and she's a musician. And she has one of these Facebook Live things, and she takes requests. And you'll type in a request, and she'll see it, and then she'll play it. And she's really fun to watch. So anyway, this is not that, but hopefully, one of the reasons that I do these is it's fun to get together with people and talk about, bench race or talk about a particular topic, get other people's opinions, and just kind of share, have a good time between motorheads. So hopefully this has been pretty informative. But I mean, to summarize, perfect practice makes perfect. Practice makes permanent, and you want to try to get your sequence perfect first. Then you'll be fast in anything, because perfect sequence is adaptable from car to car to car. Whereas, some people can drive their car fast, but you put them in another car, and if it's totally different, like if you've ever driven a car with a flat plane crank, like the Mustang Shelby 350, you're not going to have a whole lot of low end torque. You've got to really rev that motor high. And if you're not used to that, if you're used to driving let's say a big block Corvette, which has a lot of torque, then you're going to have to adapt. Or even the Turbo Solstice. Turbo Solstices we shift at about 5,500 RPM, which is like driving a truck. But the power band is from 3,000 to 5,500. That's when the boost comes in. So if you're out of that window, you're not going to go as fast. If you take it all the way up to 6,250, it'll rev up there. There's just no power. And you're generating extra heat. So there's really no advantage. So being adaptable is part of being fast as well. You should be able to get into anything and adapt to it, and adapt to pretty much any racetrack, um, any conditions. Wind is a factor. The hardest place to drive is when it just starts to rain and when it just stops raining. When it just starts to rain is really the hardest, because not only is the track getting more and more wet, all the oil's coming up, and it's going to be super slippery for probably 2 or 3 laps until the track gets absolutely soaked and washes some of that oil away. And then some of the traction will come back, especially if you have proper rain tires. And if it started dry, you probably will have to pit or just make do with what you have. If it's a sprint race and the race is only 35 minutes long, like with SCCA and a majors or a super tour, then you're pretty much stuck with whatever you have. It doesn't work to start with rain tires, burn them up in the dry, and then the rain comes, and now you have burned up rain tires. So that doesn't work. So you've got to have a certain amount of water, or even puddles in some cases, before full-on rain tires are going to be better. And that's a function of strategy. And I've got a little thing on my phone that shows me the weather, the forecast. I can move the little "we are here," and the radar will show me, in theory, if there's a cloud over the track or whatever, because making those decisions is really important. If you're the guy that saw that it was going to rain, and while you're on the grid, it starts to downpour, then you're going to do much better than any of the other people that have just regular dry tires. Um, I mean, rain tires in the rain when it's raining a lot are amazing until they reach their limit. I mean, if there's a flood, even good rain tires obviously have a threshold where you're going to hydroplane if you go beyond that threshold. So, so anyway, I hope everybody out there will work on being faster. You've got to have those three elements. You know what I do for a living. Call me. I'll be happy to help you get faster and faster. I've got a trained eye. A lot of people out there, they want to instruct, but they just don't really have that much experience, as far as a racing background. It would be like me trying to be a singing teacher. Now, I have sang, but I am not qualified to be an instructor. Or like they do it in karate, you've got to be a black belt before you get to instruct. I mean, yes, you can help your buddy or whatever if you guys are green belts or whatever, but the black belts are the ones that are the masters at it. So if you get a chance to learn from somebody who is a master at it, you will go further. You will learn better and get to a higher level of going fast and safely. Because, going fast for one lap and terrifying yourself, I mean, that might work for, again, autocross or time attack, but you've got to be consistent. You've got to do that over and over and over, and then know how to pass people. So that's, racecraft is a whole nother. We could do a whole segment on just racecraft. Maybe we will. So for next week, I haven't decided what I'm going to talk about yet. So if you have any suggestions, put them in the comments or on my Facebook site with comments, or you can call me at 303 666 4113. Can email me at 100mph at go4it, the number 4, like on my logo, go4it services.com. The YouTube channel is go4it space TV. So follow me on all of those things. So Mike, Zach, Luciano, I appreciate you guys for letting me know that I've at least reached 3 people this evening. And do these things, and for a moment, all will be right with the world. So thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next week. Have a good one. Bye-bye.